Hello, welcome. You are listening to Dr. Sushma Singh today in Unit 18 Zimbabwe. Let us start the lecture with topic Poverty Alleviation Strategies in Zimbabwe. The problem of poverty and how to control and in the long term eliminate it has been a central issue in the development and planning discourse in Zimbabwe since 1980. Indeed, the policies already reviewed above sought to redress the inequalities of the past. But in the long term, there was a political vision of an egalitarian society via growth and equality, and more broadly, through the transformation of society from a settler colonial society to a socialist one, in which there would be no exploitation of man by man. That appeared to be the long-term project of the ruling party. Zimbabwe African National Union, Patriotic Front, ZANU-PF, and the independent government that came to power in 1980. That project was no longer pursued with the introduction of Economic Structural Adjustment Program ESAP mentioned earlier. When ESAP was introduced, an important component was the Social Dimensions of Adjustment SDA and the Social Development Fund SDF, which were set to deal specifically with what were considered as transitory negative effects of ESAP. However, the experience of SDA strategy and the drought of 1991 and 1992 pointed to the need to develop a more detailed strategy of government action to tackle a broad range of development issues. This conclusion led to the formulation of the Poverty Alleviation Action Plan (PAAP), a comprehensive policy paper presented at the consultative group meeting in Paris in December 1993. Objectives of the Social Dimensions of Adjustment Program SDA are to protect the poor and vulnerable groups from undue hardships resulting from structural adjustment through the short-term compensation schemes, which take the form of direct welfare payments. Strengthen international household and community level coping or survival mechanisms and strategies, and thereby integrate these groups into the mainstream of the economic reform program. Minimize cost of the fiscus through cost recovery programs in education and health sectors, while ensuring that the education and health standards are not compromised. At the same time, maximizing participation and support from third parties, notably NGOs, employee organizations, employer organizations, and local authorities, and facilitating economic activity. Generally alleviate poverty and contribute to the improvement of the standard of living of the poorest members of Zimbabwean society. Now let us discuss the program design. The SDA has two major components, namely the employment and training component as well as the social safety nets program. The first is employment and training program. This program was designed to alleviate the suffering of retrenched workers and persons with disabilities. Under this program, a retrenched worker has two choices: If the individual is still young and would like to acquire some basic practical skills so that he or she can be reemployed within the changing and hopefully expanding economy, then he or she can opt for hard skill training. If the retrenched person feels he or she no longer wants to be employed by anybody but would like to be his or her own employer, then he or she can opt for the business skill training program. The next point is social safety nets program. The social safety nets program was designed to alleviate the sufferings of the vulnerable low income groups and the poor adversely affected by the impact of price decontrol, reduced government expenditure and increased cost recovery. The scope of the program includes educational assistance. That this involves the payment of school fee for those families earning less than 400 Zimbabwean dollar per month and which cannot afford the fees which were introduced as a cost recovery measure. The second one is food security. This involves direct cash subventions to the urban poor who can no longer afford to pay the new food prices that have been brought about by price decontrol measures and removal of subsidies. This program is implemented through the development of social welfare, which is sufficiently decentralized up to the district level. Since the program is to be benefit the poor and vulnerable, it implies that it has to proceed based on some form of targeting. Thus, the different components have different targeting and delivery mechanisms. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.